This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, emerging market stocks barely made gains today. Investors remain hopeful of more stimulus to support economic recoveries. MSCI's index for developing world stocks rose 0.2% on the day, with gains capped by worries about worsening U.S. and China relations. Now, in South Africa, the JSE All Share was moderate today, pricing in a 25 basis point cut to the repo rate by its Reserve Bank. Some results also trickling in today. Mobile phone operator Vodacom shares fell just over 1% on the day. Of course, that's after it announced an almost double-digit decline in its local SA customer base in the first quarter to end in June. Meanwhile, restaurant group Spur also announcing a 20% drop in sales in its financial year ending in June. Its share price was down 2.55% on the news. In Nigeria, market heavyweights Dangote Cement and MTN lifted the all-share index today, climbing 10% and 0.84% respectively. Now, also coming up on today's show, experts warn that a reinstated ban on the sale of alcohol could lead to a crisis in South Africa. America registers a surge in unemployment claims for the first time in nearly 4 months. And while other sectors struggle to make a profit due to COVID-19, drive-in theaters are thriving in the U.S. Well, we kick off tonight's bulletin in South Africa, where foreign mine workers have begun returning to South African mines. It's at a slower rate than initially hoped as the industry rebuilds output after the easing of the coronavirus lockdown. Here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola with more.
It's estimated that 10% of the 450,000-strong workforce comes from the neighbouring states. Many of those workers, though, stayed in South Africa, leaving just 12,500 who returned home. And only 3,400 workers have been successfully brought back. There have been challenges.
There are bottlenecks at the border because the workers need corporate visas. And when we discussed with the Department of Home Affairs, they indicate that not all immigration officials are authorized to issue corporate visas.
Part of the process of bringing the foreign-based miners back to work is health screening. It's a two-step process. Screening is done in the town nearest to where the miner lives and again at the border. For Mozambican miners, they were checked at the Risano Garcia border post.
The IOM Occupational Health Center provides screenings for tuberculosis, testing for diabetes, for hypertension, and voluntary HIV screenings. This past week, we recently had 300 miners pass through the Occupational Health Center in one day. We have more than 10 staff who are working on processing these miners. The miners they make a long trip from their home community in Mozambique to South Africa, and they don't have a lot of time in the middle, so we do our best to efficiently provide these health checks to get their miners on the way.
The screenings are comprehensive and time-consuming, but miners are returning to work and are excited about it.
I am going to return to South Africa. I've been a miner for 31 years. I work so that my family and my children will have food to eat at home. I already did the health tests, so I can return to South Africa. I am very glad to return to South Africa, to work, to have food for my family. I will do everything possible to prevent COVID-19. Wear a mask, frequently wash my hands, keep 1.5 meters distance from other people every day when I do eventually go back to South Africa.
The early stages of the process were a learning curve for all concerned, especially for miners in Eswatini and Mozambique. Lesotho was also a challenge.
Now, in terms of Lesotho, the Department of Home Affairs has also agreed to open additional ports. We were only using Maseru Bridge with a capacity of approximately 300, and now they've agreed to open up a Fixback and Van Rooyen's Pass. So that will give us another almost doubling the capacity that we used to have from Lesotho.
As the process gets better streamlined, so those miners are going to be returning in bigger numbers and the mining industry can get back on its feet again. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's stay in South Africa, where uncertainties are looming over the future of its wine industry as the alcohol ban continues to impact businesses. The ban was reinstated by the government, citing an increase in alcohol-related trauma cases in hospitals. The country's wine industry is estimated to have lost a little over $300 million in local sales and exports as a result of the first ban. Now, the number could rise to $452.6 million, and that's if the ban continues for another 6 to 8 weeks. With a 300 million litre surplus, experts warn that South Africa could lose most of its wine producers over the next 5 years. Well, Sumitra Naidu is in Johannesburg now with the latest on this. Great to have you with us, Sumitra. Now, it certainly seems like that fight or back and forth between government and, of course, the alcohol industry is now ramping up. There are reports that the South African Agri Initiative, which, of course, is an organization which represents over 120 farmers in the country, has now taken the government to court in order to challenge that liquor ban. So what's the latest on that back and forth?
Yes, that's right, Uche. Agri Initiative, as you said, represents over 120 wine farmers. It's taken this case to court. There's a number of other wine organizations that have added their names to this case, and they're basically asking the court to declare the regulations imposed on alcohol invalid and unconstitutional, particularly where it relates to the transportation and selling of wine on site. Now, the applicants say the ban infringes on their constitutional rights to produce wine. They're also arguing that the regulation goes against the constitutional rights of their workers to earn a living. Now, this group is expected back in court next week. In the meantime, the National Liquor Traders Council, which represents over 34,000 traders, wrote to the president as well after the second ban was announced and gave him until the 24th of July, which is tomorrow, to lift that suspension. The president is scheduled to speak this evening. In fact, he's probably speaking right now. So we're not too sure if he's going to address the situation in his in that speech tonight. But yeah, this court cases are going back and forth, and we have no resolution as yet. For now, the ban stays in place. Uche?
Well, Sumitra, as we wait to hear what the president says, we know the government has already pretty much said that the decision to ban alcohol may be reviewed at any time. So does that signal that they're sort of open to negotiating with alcohol producers, or does the state seem set on a ban through the lockdown period?
Well, you know, Uche, there is some confusion around this. When the president spoke on the 12th of July, he did say the ban will stay in place during the lockdown. There were attempts a few days later to settle this confusion. The government said through its Twitter channel that the ban will be in place during level 3 lockdown regulations and not for the entire duration of the lockdown. So there's still no clarity, and there hasn't been an official response from government. And again, you know, this could come out in that speech tonight. But apart from the lawsuits piling up against the government around the tobacco and the liquor ban, both industries are prepared to sit down with government to find a solution. Right now, government is looking at the chaos alcohol is causing. It was clear when the president spoke last week that they were very disappointed and had to make a decision based on advice from medical experts in terms of beds needed in the hospitals. The president pointed out that there was clear evidence of increased trauma cases from the time the ban was lifted in June, cases that were alcohol related. Uche?
Well, according to the alcohol stakeholders, Sumitra, not just their bottom lines are impacted by this or threatened by this. Thousands of jobs are now at stake, not just for farmers and producers, but also firms such as bottling firms and label-making firms, amongst others. Now, paint us a picture. What exactly is at stake for the industry at this stage?
This is it. I mean, you know, there is a massive value chain both in the liquor industry and in the tobacco industry. So you think about just sales. It's not only sales. There's so many other industries that actually go into that. As you say, bottling, labeling, the production, the farming, all of this is being affected. The liquor industry is warning thousands of jobs will be lost if the ban stays in place any longer, over and above the jobs that have already been lost. The industry believes that this ban is just too harsh. There are other measures that can be put in place to limit alcohol abuse. The problem, though, is that, this issue of alcohol existed long before lockdown, long before COVID. South Africa has a problem with alcohol abuse, which sadly could also be seen as one of the reasons why the liquor industry has become such an important contributor to the economy. The liquor industry contributes around 3% to GDP. That is substantial, and the industry employs over 1 million people. The wine industry alone is expecting over 18,000 job losses. Close to 100 wine cellars are near closure. This is likely to have a material impact on the export industry as well. South Africa is the 7th largest wine exporter in the world. But if you're not producing and you have no staff, the industry will soon lose that title. Uche?
Well, Sumitra, shifting focus just slightly, there's also been a ban on the sale of cigarettes in the country. Where are the tobacco farmers and cigarette producers in this debate?
So, Uche, there are court battles here as well, and these are continuing. The Fair Trade Tobacco Association lost its case against government, but it went to court. But it has asked the court for leave to appeal and is hoping to take its case to the Supreme Court of Appeals. But in the last case, the judge found that the Minister of Cooperative Governance didn't need to prove her decision as being fair in instituting this ban. The ban was put in place to ensure the safety of citizens against the virus, as it does deal with respiratory illnesses. The judge said that she considered all the facts before her, and the fact that a substance is addictive does not make it essential. So the ban stays in place. Unfortunately, government looks set to continue with this ban. But having said that, research shows that illicit trade is growing. South Africa has 11 million smokers or thereabout, also an important contributor to GDP and jobs. Smokers, though, are still smoking. The research shows that because illicit trade has grown so much, smokers are still getting a hold of their cigarettes. And of course, even though SARS is losing out billions every month as a result of the smoking ban, illicit trade is just thriving at the moment. Uche?
Well, Sumitra, as always, great to have your insights. That's Sumitra Naidu joining us there in Johannesburg. Meanwhile, South Africa's restaurant owners have also taken to the streets protesting against the devastating impact of the lockdown restrictions on their businesses. Now, tables and chairs were used to block roads outside various restaurants as a part of that protest. Here's CGTN's Beryl Oro reporting.
Thousands of restaurants and bar owners placed chairs and tables on the streets protesting against lockdown regulations that have prevented the industry from selling alcohol and trading beyond a 9 p.m. local time curfew.
We're following social distancing and sanitization protocols down to the nth degree. We're providing a safe environment for people to come and enjoy themselves and behave like responsible adults. So with that in mind, let us be able to, number one, serve alcohol in a responsible manner with their meals, and let us be able to trade past 9 o'clock.
The nation's restaurant and bar industry has been one of the hardest hit by the restrictions imposed at the end of March in order to curb the spread of the coronavirus. At the end of June, restaurants were allowed to offer sit-down services at limited capacity without serving alcohol. But for them, this is simply not enough.
I would like government to reinstate the sale of alcohol, which would then make my business sustainable to a certain extent. We've updated our booking system to accommodate that, the social distancing, but we need to just get back. And alcohol, in my restaurant anyway, it accounts for 40% of of my sales, you know.
Mateza has not retrenched his staff, but about 70% of them have not received any money from the Unemployment Insurance Fund, which has been paying out COVID-19 relief benefits to employees who cannot work as a result of the restrictions.
It has caused me not to be able to afford even the smallest things for my family. Just to pay the bills has become a problem. Plus the government hasn't done much on helping us with the UIF, so most of our families are going home to bed hungry.
Data gathered by the Restaurant Association of South Africa shows a rise in unemployment that puts pressure on the economy's recovery plan and potentially exposes the sector to a threatening vicious cycle.
We've been doing our research and we calculating close on 400,000 at this time, but every day doors are closing permanently, and the more doors close permanently, the harder it is for us to maintain the employment within the industry, and the harder it's going to be on the government's balance sheet.
In a survey carried out by ASUS Group, a hospitality group, about 67% of restaurants said they are doing less than 20% of monthly turnover compared to July last year, while 90% of fine dining restaurants remain closed. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, let's now take a look at some corporate headlines today. Shares of Petra Diamonds have fallen after the company reported selling 23% fewer diamond carats for 36% less revenue, and that's amid the coronavirus pandemic. The company sold 2.9 million carats in its full year 2020, down from 3.7 million in the previous year, while revenues dropped to $295.8 million from around $460 million. And South Africa's Sasol Group says the unit damaged by fire at its Lake Charles chemical project is expected to reach meaningful output by October. The world's top producer of motor fuel from coal had previously announced that it was hoping to fix the damage by September. However, delays and cost overruns have brought about more challenges. And South Africa's mobile operator Vodacom Group has reported a 7.6% rise in first quarter group service revenue. This is due to the strong demand for voice, data and financial services in its domestic market during the coronavirus lockdown. Now, group service revenue grew to $1.14 billion in the 3 months ending June 30th, and that's up from $1.05 billion from the previous year. And Madagascar is expected to take full control of its national airline after ending a partnership with Air Austral, paving the way for potential new deals for the carrier. The deal was concluded through a swap involving Air Austral's stake in Air Madagascar and shares in the nation's Social Security Fund. And that is a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's take a short break now. Still coming up on the show. Tanzania is finally ranked as a lower middle income economy. And Egypt plans to boost the use of natural gas resources in the country.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Now, the World Bank has officially ranked Tanzania as a lower middle income economy under its latest country income classification report. The country's finance and planning minister, Dr. Philip Mpango, says that the announcement has come 5 years ahead of schedule. Here's CGTN's Daniel Kijo with more.
Tanzania is now the second largest economy in East Africa. It's now the second East African Community member state to achieve middle income status after Kenya. The World Bank has categorized Tanzania as a lower middle income country after the nation made reforms aimed at improving its economic development.
Tanzania is now one of the 5 countries in the world to enter lower mid-sized economic status this year, meaning 2020.
The country joins 12 other countries in Africa to reach middle income status. Since President Magufuli came into power in 2015, the government has fought against corruption, implemented infrastructure projects like the standard gauge railway, road improvements, and building a hydropower plant. The government has also more than doubled tax collection that has been directed towards development plans to help build a more industrial economy. This has helped the country achieve its goal 5 years ahead of its scheduled Tanzania Development Vision 2025.
Revenue has increased. Economic growth is at 7%. Even when that goes down, we're at 6.9%. And even during the COVID-19 era, when other countries might hit zero growth or even negative economic growth. By our projections, even if we were to go down, it will be 5.5 or 6%. So if you look at all that, we're indeed at mid-sized economic development.
The World Bank classifies countries based on gross national income per capita. The lower middle income economies range between $1,036 and $4,045. Tanzania's gross national income per capita in 2019 was $1,080. The country's National 5-Year Development Plan 2016-2021 on nurturing industrialization for economic transformation has taken lessons from countries like Malaysia and Singapore by increasing deliberate measures aimed at promoting industrial development and economic transformation as a tool for life-changing development. Tanzania last year recorded economic growth of 7%, making the country one of the fastest-growing economies in Africa.
In just 4 to 5 years, over 8,000 factories have been built and some are being completed now.
Economists say that getting into middle-income status is a step forward in the national development process, but added that it might not necessarily mean the narrowing of the gap between the rich and the poor. So now the government must work hard to ensure that no one is left behind in the national development agenda. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Well, let's turn our attention now to Africa's ICT sector. Now, ICT experts agree that the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted Africa's ICT industry. But they also say while it has spurred a lot of changes in the market, it has also exposed the need to increase investments in digital technologies. Now, the reality is Africa lags behind the rest of the world in the reach and quality of its ICT penetration. They also say that Africa faces a problem of affordability, and that means as much as ICT infrastructure may become available on the continent, it will count for little if Africa's population is unable to use it. And that's especially if technology will play a key role in the continent's economic recovery going forward. Well, let's take a closer look at the trajectory of Kenya's digital economy with Tony Chuji. He is the MD of CECOM's Northeast and East Africa operation. CECOM, of course, is a leading data network service provider on the continent. Well, great to have you on the show with us, Mr. Chuji. Does it ring true that this pandemic has been a major disruptor in Africa's ICT industry? And if so, to what extent has there been a change so far?
Okay, thank you, Uche, for having me. And indeed, the pandemic has been quite disruptive, and not only in the ICT sector, but it cuts across, the different sectors of the economy. I think at the advent of the crisis, one of the things that we saw immediately in the sector is that a lot of businesses began to, migrate and then to work from home. So today we are familiar with new terms like the new normal, working remotely, working from home. One of the enablers of this has been the ICT services that enabled businesses to remotely pivot and begin to work from home. Now, those businesses that are already connected and are online were able to seamlessly do this without a big hiccup. It is indeed, ICT is a big catalyst in running businesses. And so perhaps today the CIO is one of the most important people in the boardroom because everybody now appreciates that for you to survive any form of crisis, ICT is perhaps going to be one of the biggest enablers to the business. So one thing that we saw in the sector is that there was a surge in demand because businesses were now working remotely, working from home. So a lot of networks, were put on the strain because of the surge in demand. What we've continued to do is to ensure that we are on hypercare mode to ensure that we're able to provide services more effectively to businesses to enable them to continue to pivot. The other disruption that we've seen is that because of working remotely and working from home, there is now a lot of gaps that exist. If you look at an example of education, for example, one of the biggest hiccups is the inability of a lot of children to be able to connect and work online. And this talks to the need for concerted effort to further address the gaps that exist in the sector. We've also seen a trend whereby there is now need for additional services. For example, security has become a key component. The need for cloud services is becoming increasingly important. And this is all disruption that is happening. It's positive disruption in the sector in the sense that the sector is now actively working towards looking for solutions to be able to address this new need and new demand that exists. So that's what I would say. We've seen major disruption, positive to a large extent,
right.
But on the other hand, it puts a strain on the demand on infrastructure.
Well, speaking of gaps in the sector, of course, as we mentioned, one of the things that experts point to is the reach as well as the quality of ICT penetration in Africa. You talked about the strain it puts on infrastructure, but is it going to be enough to speed up the adoption of digital technology, especially now in this time of COVID?
Yes, indeed, because of the realization of the fact that any business to survive and continue to thrive during this time or even post the pandemic, ICT or adoption of technology is going to play a critical role in enabling businesses to operate. At SECOM, for example, we operate a very extensive submarine cable network that spans all the way from Southern Africa, touching countries in East Africa, and spanning all the way into Europe and the Far East in India. And then this has enabled businesses to continue to connect. So basically, SECOM has enabled Africa to connect to the rest of the world. So that investment has played a significant role because business now is a lot more efficient. There is a lot more quality of service that has enabled businesses to trade effectively. It has attracted foreign direct investment in Africa. And so, this investment in networks that are able to further, address this demand is critical. If you move away from, the submarine cable where SECOM owns and operates about 17,000 kilometers of fiber, inland or, within the terrestrial part is perhaps another critical area that requires further investment. At SECOM, for example, we run and operate an internet-ready network that runs across Eastern Africa region, all the way from Kenya, Uganda into Rwanda. That is internet ready, and we have a presence in a lot of internet exchange points like, Kenya Internet Exchange Point. We are in Uganda, Tanzania, and Johannesburg at the same time. The idea is to bring services closer to a lot of our partners and our customers and ensure that, we are driving this. Now, penetration, of course, is still a lot lower in Africa. It's just under 50%. And that talks to the need for further concerted effort between governments and the different players to ensure that, this effort is even driven further.
Right. Well, let's talk a bit about Kenya because we know it has been working towards becoming an ICT hub on the continent. It's been actually dubbed the Silicon Savannah. But what's your take on its progress, providing that environment that, of course, nurtures innovation and as well provides the infrastructure needed to push forward the idea of a digital technology, the digital economy, rather?
Yeah. Thank you, Uche. I must say Kenya has really made a lot of strides in terms of adopting technology. If you remember or recall about 11 years ago, and by the way, SICOM is celebrating 11 years since inception, and then, thank you for the progress that we've made thus far in enabling Kenya as a country to make a lot of great strides in digital transformation. Kenya was was at the forefront in ensuring that, the fiber optic landing in the region, it found its way with a lot of ease by ensuring that there was policy and regulation that made it easy for the submarine cables to land. And since that time, the country has been actively and adopted a very proactive national ICT policy. And if you look at some of the goals that were set, about a decade ago, was about one, connecting all the citizens of the country to the internet. Secondly, was to build a digital knowledge economy. The other goal was to be able to deliver government services, using ICT or technology platforms, and also to attract foreign direct investments. If you look at most of those goals, you can actually tick them and say that to a large extent these have been achieved, and thanks to the support from providers such as SICOM that have realized the need for government to be able to meet some of these goals and have further explored ways and means in exploring investment to further drive the services across. So the country, is doing well to a large extent, but of course, there's still areas of improvement in terms of, just delivering these services across the different sectors of the economy.
Now, you pointed to better regulation as well as policy in Kenya, and most ICT experts seem to point to those two as key catalysts to transforming Africa's digital economy going forward. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree. For any attraction of foreign direct investment, any investor investing in ICT sector wants to operate in an environment that is predictable and that is clear in terms of the different regulations and the frameworks that have been set up. So if you look at a number of countries, Kenya has made a lot of strides in this space. And I'll give you an example of a digital innovation, which is financial services like M-Pesa, which is a globally renowned service. It is because of an environment that enabled technology to flourish in this space. That is why the sector has been able to come up with a globally renowned innovation that have done very well in the sector. Now, some of the countries within the region and East Africa are still lagging behind in terms of ensuring that the environment is conducive enough to be able to attract foreign direct investment. Things like licensing regime is an example. It needs to be predictable. Incentives needs to be put in place to be able to attract investors to put their money in driving further investment of infrastructure across the region.
Right.
And so the government plays a significant role in ensuring that there is sufficient policy framework that then gives an incentive to investment in the sector.
Well, thank you so much for your insights, Mr. Tugay. That's, of course, Tony Tugay. He's the MD of SICOM's Northeast and East Africa operations. Well, let's turn our attention now to Egypt. The country will grant licenses to new vehicles, but that's only if they can operate on the dual fuel system. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi says that the move is aimed at preserving the environment and making use of the country's plentiful natural gas resources. Now, Egypt is looking to rely more on cheaper, cleaner energy sources and to increase the amount of power generated from renewables to 20% by 2022. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with more.
The Egyptian president is trying to convince Egyptians to switch to cars that run on natural gas or have a dual fuel system. For now, he's targeting certain vehicles.
The taxis, buses and microbuses are the priority in the first phase. They will be forced to convert to natural gas or dual fuel. The whole plan is expected to take 3 to 5 years. It will cost about $15.6 billion.
20-year-old cars will be replaced with new dual-fuel cars at discounted prices and with interest-free loans. According to the government, this phase could see nearly 2 million vehicles powered in part with natural gas. As an incentive, the government will also allowing car owners to pay for the cost of converting to dual fuel in installments. Muhammad Ahmed is a taxi driver who has made the switch at one of Cairo's many conversion centers.
You use natural gas, and when it's empty, you change to fuel until you go and refill the gas. It's very convenient and saves a lot of expenses for me. It's successful as long as you know how to deal with natural gas, such as maintenance of the cylinder and the engine. It's good and smooth on the road.
More centers are being constructed to cover the increasing number of dual-fuel conversions. The second phase of the project will concentrate on personal vehicles.
According to the state's plan, the second phase will apply on brand new private cars. They will not be issued a license unless they have a dual-fuel system.
Some car dealers have mixed reaction to the initiative.
I support the section to convert taxi, buses and transportation vehicles because they are constantly in the streets and can cover 150 to 200,000 kilometers per year, so they cause a lot of pollution. I have my doubts about brand new private cars. It will cause complications and can affect the market because the gas cylinders are not popular and take a lot of space. The better option is to import ready-made natural gas cars already manufactured this way in the plants.
The government says this initiative will save billions of dollars from importing the expensive fuel. Natural gas also has less impact on the environment as it's the cleanest burning fossil fuel. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, let's stay in Egypt, where some professionals have lost their jobs because of the coronavirus pandemic. Businesses have been forced to either shut down or operate at 25% capacity. Here's Wilkista Nyabwa reporting on the economic recovery that is a no-show.
The novel coronavirus has in recent weeks brought global operations to a standstill. Businesses are counting operational losses due to various government-imposed restrictions aimed at combating the pandemic. In Egypt's Cairo-based theatre, Sitara, the case is no different. Members of the group are forced to cancel all scheduled performances, acting workshops and school trips. Despite many businesses opting to use online platforms, Sitara was shut down in fear of the spread of the disease.
Hi, I'm Emma Davis and I'm the Artistic Director of Sitara Theatre. We provide theatre for families in Cairo, and sadly today, because of coronavirus, we are shutting down, hopefully temporarily.
It all looks very grim and depressing. The idea of having to put everything away in storage feels very heavy. It's a difficult feeling to describe.
The austerity measures put in place have cast uncertainty over the country's economic recovery as job losses continue to surge. Tourism and other vital sectors have been crippled, hitting the economy hard and slowing down growth forecasts.
The psychological impact is huge, especially since we're performing artists. We mainly rely on live performances. We can't come together, we can't work on new material. I don't even see anyone anymore, let alone be able to perform a live show.
I have been looking for a job ever since. Employment opportunities are few for managers, even for the staff, because now everyone is back to working with a lesser capacity than the usual flow of any restaurant or cafe.
According to Egypt's statistics agency, unemployment stood at 9.2% in April. The country has so far registered more than 89,000 cases of coronavirus, although the number of new cases has fallen in recent weeks. As Egyptians grapple with job losses and pay cuts amid the pandemic, many remain hopeful of better days to come. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
You are watching Global Business Africa. We're going to take a short break now, but still coming up on the show. The U.S. registers a surge in unemployment claims for the first time in nearly 4 months. And France's relaxed travel restrictions pave the way for further recovery.
Again, he can hold in guns. Machine guns from police forces towards the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant.
Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
And now to some international news. The number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits has surged for the first time in nearly 4 months. Now, the U.S. Labor Department reports that initial claims for state unemployment benefits increased to a seasonally adjusted 1.4 million for the week ending July 18th. That's up from 1.3 million in the prior week. Now, analysts are saying that the jump suggests that the labor market was stalling amid a resurgence in new COVID-19 cases and depressed demand. The rise was the first weekly increase in applications since the week ending March 28th, when non-essential businesses such as restaurants and gyms were shuttered to slow the spread of the coronavirus. And more people are on the go now as France continues to ease the lockdown measures it imposed because of the coronavirus pandemic. That means guest houses are seeing increased numbers of travelers looking to enjoy their summer holidays. Now, Ross Cullen has more on that story for us from Paris.
Soaking up the sun and swimming in the sea is a traditional French summer holiday. But this year, the pandemic ripped up bookings for millions of people across the world. Now travel restrictions are lifted in France, the public can start taking trains and planes again. These passengers in Paris are not overly concerned about the risks.
I'm not concerned, even though our region gets a lot of tourists. I spoke to my family and they don't have any concerns either. Our region wasn't as affected as much as others.
We don't think it's risky because we live in the countryside. There aren't many tourists. We go grocery shopping once a week and we protect ourselves.
I'm going to the coast with friends, but I'm worried about my dad here in Paris in case I catch the virus and bring it home. So I'll try to get tested before I come back.
France's national rail operator is trying to deal with more crowded trains. Travellers urged to have their temperature taken before they board high-speed services across the country. France's major cities traditionally empty over the summer, people coming to places like this, Montparnasse station in the south of Paris, to head out on holiday. The changing nature of 2020 travel also means more people are opting for staycations in their home country, with guest houses receiving a new flux of visitors.
Guest houses usually have a garden, are self-contained and made for groups of up to 10 people. So they totally fit in with the sanitary situation. We're seeing a new clientele this year. We're attracting families with young children, a demographic that used to fly on holiday all over Europe.
Lockdown has eased, even as mask restrictions have tightened. Authorities must now try to curb the spread of COVID-19 during a holiday season in which thousands of people vacate cities and head to the coasts. Ross Cullen, CGTN, Paris.
Meanwhile, China has launched its first attempt to reach Mars on Thursday, sending aloft the Tianwen-1 lander aboard a Long March 5 rocket. It is not only an advanced aerospace mission, it's also become a major marketing strategy by commercial brands who are working with the China Aerospace Science and Tech Corporation. Our Chen Tong was at the launch center in Henan province.
As the Mars mission began, it was also the start of a special live streaming event, with broadcasters imparting some aerospace knowledge while trying hard to sell some down-to-earth products. Beauty brand USI worked with China Aerospace Science and Technology to launch a new skincare lotion, using Mars in its marketing strategy to target consumers with facial problems such as bumps and eye colors that may have uncomfortably reminded them of the surface of the red planet. USI is hoping many launch viewers will turn into product buyers.
Using an event for crossover marketing aims to attract more consumers. This was a pretty rare live stream because the event was so big and impressive. It should help us attract more people than a pop star. The Mars mission is something everyone in the country can be proud of, young or old, man or woman. And this broad target base also matches our consumer base.
USI is not the only brand counting on the Mars mission for help with its marketing. Auto brand Beijing and liquor maker Meng Zhilan are doing something similar, putting an aerospace appeal into their new products. China Aerospace Science and Technology has been very active in promoting itself as the basis for some high-flying marketing.
Our innovation had been encouraging companies to come up with creative products and use crossover marketing to take advantage of the special attraction of aerospace technology. It's a unique way to define aerospace culture and spirit to let more consumers know about China's aerospace activities.
Commercial products and aerospace. It seems there's no connection between the two. But crossover marketing is letting brands to use people's awareness on the big event to create a unique marketing strategy.
From IP point of view, of course, they want to raise, strengthen, or increase their image. And from the organization point of view, this kind of crossover can also help them to get more funding or donation from the commercial activities like this.
So it's no surprise that this sort of marketing strategy has a large appeal. Tmall says sales of these crossover products are doing well.
High-quality domestic brands are seeing increasing sales on Tmall's platform. We're confident about the future of the consumption sector and the ability of domestic brands to continue exploring how to become more chic and popular.
From beauty brands to food and daily necessities, China brands are continuously exploring innovative marketing strategies. With China's aerospace industry participating, more innovations are expected to come for China's products and marketing to put them in your homes. The sky's the limit. Chen Tong, ICS for CGTN at the Wenchang Space Launch Center, Hainan Province.
Well, on that note, let's turn our attention to commodity markets today. Gold prices sliding lower after hitting their highest in September 2011 at around $1,876 per ounce. Now, traders say the case for higher gold prices remains strong, with, of course, tension between the U.S. and China rising and a weaker dollar. Meanwhile, platinum prices dropping 1.2% today as demand continues to contract on the back of weaker auto sales. Oil prices rising today on the back of a weaker dollar, but of course gains were capped by concerns about rising U.S. oil inventories and a persistent surge in new coronavirus cases. Well, let's take a short break now, still to come. While other sectors struggle to make a profit due to COVID-19, drive-in theaters are thriving in the U.S.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys. The greatest sights. The greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Now, the global film industry has been battered by the coronavirus pandemic. Movie theaters around the world remain shut. Film festivals have been cancelled. And of course, movie releases and productions have been postponed. But one part of the industry has been booming, drive-in theaters. Here's Karina Huber reporting from New York.
Moviegoers gather in their cars at a pop-up drive-in theater near New York City. Tonight's film, Mean Girls. Cars are parked 6 feet apart. The audio is pumped in via a radio channel.
I guess I'll take a popcorn.
Food and drinks can be purchased at outdoor concession stands. The screening was organized by the group behind the Tribeca Film Festival that under normal circumstances hosts a 2-week festival in Manhattan in April. It attracts celebrities and millions of movie buffs. This year, it was canceled because of the coronavirus pandemic. The organizers had to get creative. This is just one of many drive-in theaters to pop up across the United States. Pre-pandemic, the roughly 300 drive-in theaters struggled to compete with traditional theaters. But now they're experiencing a bit of a comeback, as it's one of the only safe ways for people to gather and watch a movie. Some drive-ins are reporting up to a 40% jump in business.
So we're seeing this resurgence in drive-in theaters popping up, whether they be already established drive-in theaters that are now obviously reopening, or we're seeing the innovation from community organizations to local businesses who are saying, hey, I have a big old parking lot, I'm gonna go out and spend a little bit of money and get this screen.
Hey guys, Bel Air Diner is doing a drive-in.
This diner in New York City is now in the film business. It has transformed the nearby parking lot into a drive-in. It opened in April. The co-owner says it's been wildly successful.
We sell our tickets in under 5 minutes. It's not a ton of tickets, but 45 tickets in under 5 minutes. People order food, they really, really love it.
The diner screens classics like Dirty Dancing and Grease that are more affordable to purchase from distributors. But Della Porta says he doesn't profit from ticket sales. It's just a means to drive food sales. Customers can order food from the diner via an app. The food is then delivered to their cars.
That has allowed me to hire back staff, to bring a lot of people back that I laid off.
Walmart is also hoping to use drive-ins to attract more customers. It has teamed up with Tribeca Enterprises to transform 160 of its store parking lots into drive-ins beginning in August. Customers will be able to order snacks from Walmart and have them delivered to their car. But what happens after the pandemic? Will drive-ins survive? Cheers thinks they could.
It might be a year before people feel comfortable going into a movie theater. We're going to start seeing that virtual spaces, these larger outdoor spaces, are just going to become the norm.
Karina Huber for CGTN, New York.
And before we leave you, here's a quick look at how Africa's currencies performed today. South Africa's rand firming up, with money markets pricing in a 25 basis points cut to the repo rate by South Africa's Reserve Bank to an all-time low of 3.5%. Meanwhile, Kenya's shilling weakening to a new record low of 108 shillings against the dollar. That was brought on by a scramble for hard currencies from importers who are resuming businesses following the easing of the coronavirus lockdowns. Now, the shilling has shed about 5.83% since mid-March, when, of course, Kenya reported its first COVID-19 case. And that is it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.